It's a pleasure to welcome His Excellency Dr. Jamil Mahood, President of Ecuador, here to this forum, but also a pleasure to welcome the people who are here. We have quite an extraordinary audience. We have former and current Mason Fellows who are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Mason Fellows program, and perhaps one of the most distinguished of the Mason Fellows graduates is seated just to my left, class of 1989. We also have alumni who are here, who are attending the annual alumni refresher event, which is focusing on international development. We have symposium participants who have gathered for the inauguration of the new Center for International Development. That center is a major new initiative of the university, an interdisciplinary response, which will be a university-wide center housed here in the Kennedy School. And it's also vital to the Kennedy School because we see our mission as training leaders for public service and as doing research that contributes to the solution of public policy problems. And certainly the issues which the new Center for International Development will deal with are central to that. In addition, with it, we will be starting a new program for master's students who wish to work in international development. So we're making progress on an area of great importance. I should notice before we turn to our president another piece of good news, which is we have, through the generosity of an alumnus of the Kennedy School, Pierre-Marie Boisson, an establishment of a fellowship for Haiti by the foundation Sogabank, which will allow Haitian students to come and join us in this study of international development. President Mahood is a native of Loja, Ecuador. He got his doctoral degree in law from the Catholic University in Quito, and during his student years, not surprisingly, he was president of the Federation of Catholic University Students, showing his talents at an early age. He subsequently became Minister of Labor and Human Resources, served in the Ecuadorian Congress from 1986 to 1988, and in 88 first ran for presidency of Ecuador, was not successful then, and decided after that to come to the Kennedy School. I'm pleased to say that after a year at the Kennedy School, he did win his master's in public administration during his year here. And he returned to Quito. He then ran again and was elected to the Congress, then elected mayor of Quito and re-elected, and assumed the presidency of his country in 1998. It's been a difficult period because he inherited a number of economic problems, and he's had a lot on his mind as he's tried to put Ecuador's economy in order. Some of what he has had to do was not terribly popular, but he is quoted as saying that he was elected to do what is correct, not as what is most comfortable. But I'd like to single out one other accomplishment which he has already achieved, which is he successfully negotiated an end to the half-century-old border dispute between Peru and Ecuador, which had produced a nasty little war in 1995, and which took true statesmanship to rise above some of the political and national pressures of the day and to reach an agreement with President Fujimori. And he told me that coming soon, I think on May 13th, he and President Fujimori and President Cardoso of Brazil will put in place the last border marker on the disputed area, which will complete the process. So we are extraordinarily proud of the accomplishments of this graduate of the Kennedy School, and just delighted to welcome back President Jamil Mahood.
I don't know other words than thank you. I have to reciprocate Joseph Naif's words saying that after 95 conflict between Ecuador and Peru, he came to both countries. And after his visit, we could find a final arrangement to that border setting. Ten years ago, I was in this very same place with some of our classmates. It was the class day at the Kennedy School, the last day of the year. And I was asked to say some reflections about the year, the Mason program, about our experiences here. Now, 10 years later, we're here again. So remember, it takes 10 years after leaving the Kennedy School to get the presidency. At that time, we were doing the same things that you are doing now. Drinking gallons of coffee, calling classmates at 3 a.m., asking for some answer to some problem set. Very nervous about the upcoming exams. Waiting to enter the reading period. You know all this very well. And we were on that. But at the same time, we were like you, dreaming, hoping, believing, waiting to go back to our countries, to work in the practical field with the tools and the learning that we have got here. At that time, as Joseph said, I have lost the presidential race in Ecuador. And it was a wonderful time for reflection, for thinking, for sharing, for doing all those things that are so difficult to do in a daily, normal life. I remember that we discovered that we have got 3 new homes here. Our new home, our apartment or dorm, our homework, and our homesick. The day that we left the Kennedy School, we remembered Albert Camus saying, he said, for some time we have been with those who make history. Now it is time to go back with those who suffer it. After that, we have learned that sometimes we can make and we can suffer our personal and national history at the same time. My country is a country the size of Colorado State, with 12 million inhabitants. It has one of the 10 bigger biodiversities in the world in this small place. We have learned that variety is a resource and is a problem. Unlike other Latin American countries, where there is just one city which represents 30%, 40% of the population, like Caracas or Lima or Santiago, Buenos Aires, Montevideo, or any capital in Central America, we have 2 big regions, and each region represents around 50% of the country. And there are 2 different, very different regions in culture, in way of thinking, way of dressing, way of eating, and we have to respect that. But it is very difficult for such a small country to handle this diversity and to get results. Our economy is based on oil exports and exports of bananas. We are the first producer in the world, shrimps, and agriculture. In my inauguration, we have a lot of bad news for our country. The external debt is around 50 million, which means 42% of our expenditures for servicing the debt each year. It means 66% of our GDP and more than 300% of our exports. We have the highest ratio of inflation in Latin America. There are only 3 countries which has more than 10%, Venezuela, Colombia, and my country, Ecuador. We have had a very small growth rate in the former year, and we will have a negative rate this year. We inherited a big fiscal deficit, around 7–8% of GDP. That would go up to 12% of GDP if I just do the things that were signed and approved by former governments and congresses, increasing expenditures without income. Poverty is going up. This is very sad, but it is true. The social situation is becoming very dangerous. And that was why, when I tried to explain this to my country, I was trying to use a picture, an image that could put all these elements in just one. And the picture that I found out was the Titanic. It was very hard to say this to a country. It is not advisable for a president to present himself conveying bad news. We always want to kill the messenger. But you have to do that if you have to face and if you want to face the problems from the roots. I said that this country could be a Titanic if we do not do the things that we have to do. I said this boat hit a big iceberg called fiscal deficit. This iceberg opened a big hole and the water was coming into the boat, and this water is called inflation. Because of the crash, many people fell down, and they are trying to swim in the water, but they are drowning because of inflation. At the same time, this boat has a part which is very weak and can open at any time, and that is the banking sector. We have a lot of problems. At the same time, this boat has 2 engines, 2 propellers, which is the real sector in the economy, the productive sector, which is not working because you can't put fuel on it. It was because we have 2 big external shocks. The oil prices, as Joseph said, went down from $16 per barrel to $7 per barrel. And we were the most affected country by the phenomenon El Niño, which destroyed our infrastructure, mainly roads and schools and health services and crops. So in many cases we have the products, but we couldn't took them to the ports. The CEPAL concluded that we lost around 20% of GDP in just 1 year because of the oil prices and El Nino. It didn't happen in 1 week as the Mitch hurricane did it in Central America, but we have lost almost the same during 1 year. The president is the captain of the ship and has all the responsibility and has to maneuver the steering wheel. But usually the Congress can block the steering wheel. So you have to take the boat to a good port, but you can't move the wheel. At the same time, there are some pumps in the boat. You can put on the pumps and start pumping the water, lowering the inflation, yeah? But those pumps have passwords, and the passwords are not in the hands of the president. There are some very important people which are flying over all the ships, all the countries, and they have the passwords. The main owner of the password has a name, IMF. Our country has a bad international image because of many cases of corruption, and this is an additional problem. I was thinking that just one of these problems was enough for a president in the first day of his mandate. But there was another big problem. In the inauguration day, we have Ecuadorian and Peruvian troops facing each other in the borderline with less than 20 or 30 meters between them, insulting each other, provoking each other, and the danger of war was real and present. The night before the inauguration day, I spent 5 hours talking with the representatives of United States, Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, trying to separate the troops to avoid the immediate risk of war, just to go again to a table to talk and to dialogue and to search for a solution. It was a real problem. Why a president has to receive such a country? I think that there's only one answer, because a man or a woman is president when he or she can, not when she or she want. And this was the case at that time. How to handle with all these problems? And I was remembering some words that were very repetitive at the Kennedy School. The word mapping, the word timing, the word sequencing. How to deal with these problems, trying to make an action plan that makes sense. I think that you need a vision to rule a country. You need a personal vision. You need a vision about yourself, your role. And you need a vision of your country and the future. You need it. I was impressed by the Aymara people, which is a people, an ethnic group in Bolivia. They say that all the human beings should have 7 harmonies to be in perfect balance. The first harmony is from the head up, and that means the harmony with our principles, our beliefs. The second is from the feet down, and that's the harmony with nature, with environment, with the Mother Earth. The third harmony is from the hand, the right hand to the right, and that's the harmony with our family, with our closest friends. The fourth is from the left hand to the left. That's the harmony with our neighbors, with our co-workers. The fifth is the harmony with the front. And they say that what we have in the front is not the future, it's the past. Because you have in front of you what you can see, and you only can see the past. You can't see the future. The sixth is to the back, and there is the future. You can't see it, but you can feel it. You have a sense, an intuition of what is coming to us. And the seventh harmony is the harmony within ourselves, is the harmony that makes sense to all of the other six and with our life. And I think that the same thing can be applied to the countries. A country has principles, has beliefs, has to protect nature, has to deal with his neighbors, within the country, with his population, its population. It has his identity from the past. It has a future, but it needs peace with all these elements. And this was a part of my inaugural address. I believe in these harmonies, and I think that we have to work to make it practical. And we need a vision of the country too. Our country is a very rich country. This is sad. Why such a rich country has such amount of problems? Michel Camdessus, when came to Quito, told us, I have signed around 80 or 90 programs with the IMF and 80 or 90 countries. This is the first time that I find out a country with such amount of problems in the short term and such great possibilities in the medium and long term. But all of these problems were real problems. I was remembering President Roosevelt saying, he said that the problem with the presidency of a country is that everything that comes to the hands of the president is because it is a problem. I think that in some Latin American countries, we have more problems than that. What comes to our hands is not a problem, it's a crisis. President Samper used to say that every day he asked his secretary, did you see the papers? What's the crisis today? And that's the way you have to govern. Okay, but we have resources. We don't have capital. We don't have technology. We need partners. We want development. We need foreign investment. We want it. And we should do what we have to do to get it. That was our vision for the country. We want to fight poverty. That's our main purpose. And for that, we need investments. We need employment, jobs, because we don't have the money in the country. We hope, and we will work as hard as it is needed to get less than 10% of inflation in 4 years, a rate growth of 5 or 6%. I hope so, Jeffrey. And to reduce poverty, not to eliminate poverty, it is not possible in just one term, but to fight to reduce poverty. We believe in that. And we made a plan, starting with the main problem that we thought was the problem with Peru. I remember that I went to Brasilia as elected president and had a meeting with President Cardoso, which is a great scholar and a great president. And I asked him, if you were president-elect of Ecuador, which of these issues should you address first? And he told me I should start with economy. I did it in Brazil. You are planting the seeds now, and you will harvest this in 3 or 4 years. First, the economy. And I asked him, what was the inflation rate in your country when you came to power? And he said, 40% per month. And I told him, yes, but I have 40% per annum. When you have 40% per month, you can do a lot of things and you can see the results immediately. It's a big change, right? When you have 40% per annum, you have to do many things, but you will not see the results immediately. You have to wait. And at the same time, the borderline dispute was a real risk. So we agreed to start with the border problem. And this was a big accomplishment for everybody, for both countries, for both governments, for both presidents, for both Congress, for the guarantors, for everybody. We had 10 meetings between Fujimori and I in 10 weeks. We were both devoted to this problem. And we could make it. The disputes between Ecuador and Peru has come for 200 years. And I was saying at that time, and I'm sure now, that the best fiscal decision was to sign the peace treaty. Because what you stop spending in arms and weapons is more than any other decision in taxes or any other place. It is true. Today at noon, we decorated Roger Fisher, who was so important in this peace agreement. He came to Ecuador, he helped us, he gave a lot of suggestions, and we could make a plan, and the plan worked. And this was the last and the longest border dispute in Latin America, and the only armed conflict in the Western Hemisphere, as President Clinton said. Everything has gone smoothly after that. No people has been assassinated. No one has been wounded. We have a lot of missions going back and forth to Lima and Quito and Guayaquil. We are increasing our commerce. Our commerce con Colombia goes up to $900 million per year. With Peru is 1/3 of that. And with Peru, we have complementary economies. With Colombia, we have competitive economies. So it is working, and we have peace. And this is a big achievement. And the best competitive advantage that we had for having this agreement was the presence of Ibon Baki as ambassador in Washington. That was what President Fujimori said. He can't compete with his ambassador, with Ibon. After the peace, what? The second issue was the economy. But the economy has at least 3 areas. The first one, the budget, the deficit. But the Congress of Ecuador has to approve the budget. And we won the first majority, but we have just 1/3 of the Congress. And 2/3 can go to the opposition and block the steering wheel. It took a lot of conversations and dialogues, and yesterday the Congress passed the law. We have a balanced fiscal sector. We have 3.5 deficit, which is manageable. And it took a lot of effort, but we made it. This means that we can have a program with the IMF. You know what IMF means. It's mostly fiscal. So if you have the fiscal deficit, okay, you can have this program. The negotiation commission will come to Ecuador around May the 10th, and maybe we will have the intention letter on May, and we will go to the board on June. That's our program. I want to thank Jeffrey Sachs for all his help. He's our advisor. He's our good friend. He has put a lot of effort in it, a lot of conversations, of visits, and I think that we are getting our results. We have a big problem to face now. It is the financial sector problem. Because of the El Niño, many enterprises are broken. They can't pay to the banks, and the banks can fail. And this will go to the fiscal deficit. How much of that cost will increase the deficit? That's the question. We have now international auditors working in the banks, and they have 2 months to present the results. In that moment, we will know really what's happening with our fiscal sector. And at that moment, we will have to make decisions to protect our system, but to protect our budget too. That's the next big problem that we have to face. At the same time, we have been working on anti-corruption policies. The day before the inauguration, President Jimmy Carter called me and asked if I would accept to have in Ecuador a pilot program using all the experiences that around the world have worked against corruption. I, of course, accepted. He came to Ecuador in November, and on May the 4th, this year, we will have the big conference in Atlanta, and the CNN World Report this year will be focused on anti-corruption. And there are 3 countries invited: Jamaica, Costa Rica, and Ecuador. And we have the plan to present there. At the same time, we are working on the privatization sector. We have to go to Congress again. This is my karma, I think. But I hope that we can get the votes to pass these laws. We want to privatize the electric sector, around $2 billion. We want to privatize the telecommunication sector, and we want to open the oil sector, which is the most important in our country, upstream and downstream. We need a law that will rule like a framework, and the president can handle every process through presidential authorizations. That's the idea, and I have the hope that we will get it. I think that with the privatization problem, we will have the same response that we have with the peace problem. That was the most difficult issue. And if that works as I expect, maybe we will have this law approved in May. At the same time, we are dealing with a social security system, which has problems too. And the law is now in the hands of the Congress. We have to change our education, the law and the system, our health system, our housing, the way that we are building houses for the poor, and we proved a new way to help the poorest. We created a solidarity, we call it bono. And there are a lot of good things about this. The first one, we didn't have a map of the poverty in my country. And it takes a lot of time to get it. We used a shortcut. We asked the churches, all the churches in the country, to receive the inscription of every mother with a child under 18 years old. They just presented the identification card and a birth certificate of the age of his or her child. And they just put a name on the list. As they were churches, the fraud was very small, if it was. And they received $1 per inscription. So we get all the inscriptions in the country in 6 weeks without creating one public job. We have had 3 big subsidies in Ecuador. The subsidy to the electricity, which goes in 75% to the middle and upper classes. The subsidy to cooking gas, which went 75% to other countries because our price was lower than Colombians and Peruvians. And the diesel subsidy. Former presidents have tried to cut some subsidy in some percentage. We retired the 3 in 100%. I dropped from 77% to 33% of approval in 8 days. And we did it. So this bono, solidarity bono, was created to compensate the poor. We had the list. How can we pay to the recipients? We asked the banking sector to do that job. The mother goes to a bank, presented the ID, and the database says, okay, she has the right, and the bank pays. We are paying in money, not in services or species. The cost of distribution is less than 2%, and there are no problems with the recipients. And we are paying 1.4 million every month. Okay, what was the timing? It was 3 months for Peru. We did it in 77 days. 6 months for budget. We used 8 and something in this one. And 9 months in privatizations and social security. And maybe we can make it. The idea was to put all the reforms, the big reforms, in the first year of government, to put the basis to launch the country. We have to map the coalitions. Where are the friends, where are the foes, where are the adversaries, where are the political parties, where is the press, where is the church, where are the unions, you know, all those sectors which are so important for government. And you have to think about what's the role of the president in this mess. We have to choose some type of leadership. There's a big debate about these things in Ecuador. And the question is has the president a real leadership or he hasn't? And it is legitimate. We choose a principle-centered leadership. That's my personal choice. I have beliefs, I have principles, and I have to get that harmony from the head up. I will never broke a principle in which I believe to get any result. The second is the problem with democracies, the problem with congresses. Sometimes it is like if you were a doctor saying to the family of the patient, bring her to the operating room, you need to take out the appendix, and knowing that she can die if you do not act rapidly, and seeing all the family discussing and debating and using time, precious time. What you should do in that cases? We decided to respect democracy. We know that democracy has costs, but we think that those costs are lower than an authoritarian regime. Because if a president is legitimate, because he was elected, because he is acting properly, he's respecting the Constitution, he is trying to get the social benefits of the population, he has a moral authority, and he can stand up, even if he doesn't have political support in the amount as he would like to have. The third one was how you have to behave. What's the meaning of the word firm? What's the real meaning of the word flexibility? What's the real meaning of the word weak or soft? And I think that we should behave like a river. We have to flow. And when a river finds out a mountain in his path, the river is not blaming the mountain. He is looking a way to go out. And he always gets it. We have got the peace agreement in Congress, and we have got the budget law in Congress, and we don't have incentives to convince congressmen to vote for that. We are not paying, we don't have reserved expenditures, we are not giving extra budget items, we are not doing nothing of that. We are in the plan, in the anti-corruption plan. And we will present it to the world in May the 4th. And what we have is the chance to speak, the chance to explain, the chance to ask for help, the chance to convince, the chance to ask to the press to support. And we have chosen that way. I can't guarantee the success, but I think that is the right way. We have chosen to share the burden of these problems with the population and not to take all the burden in our shoulders. Because there are problems that are problems for the president, there are problems that are problems for the government, but there are problems that are problems for the country, problems of the country. And you have to act like a good parent. You have to say to the population that they have to face the problems too. That's what brings up the people. That's what permits the population to understand the problems and to be better in the future. In the election between production and environment, we have oil. We have made a balance. We have declared 1.4 million hectares in the Amazonian part of our country untouchable, untangible. There were protected areas. Now you can do anything there, not even cut a tree. And we are developing ecotourism with the communities, with the population. And that will be an important source of income for our country and our budget. Okay, we are in the middle of the road. We are paying all the costs now. I finished the Alcaldía de Quito as mayor of Quito with 78% of job approval. And it was high for a very long time, more than 1 year. I have around 20% now as president. And it is coming down. It is the truth. Social problems are going up. There are problems with inflation, with the currency, with wages, with unemployment. The division between the regions are going up too. Those are the problems. big problems, strikes, protesters every day. We have a national strike yesterday. It was announced as a national strike. I was afraid of not coming today, but it was a regional one and very small. I evaluated this at 6 p.m. yesterday, and I'm very glad to be here. On the other side, we have a peace treaty. We have a balanced budget. We are going to have a program with IMF. We are going to approve and apply the anti-corruption and the privatization programs. This is our situation now. What is a crisis? We are in the middle of a crisis. What is it? It is a great opportunity for me to talk with you at the School of Government about practical problems of governance in a real country. I would like to have just a case study. When the Chinese people want to write the word crisis, they use two ideograms. The first one is problem. The second one is opportunity. The problem is always there. You have to stress the opportunity. And some people say that you have a crisis when something that has to die doesn't, and something that has to be born doesn't. So you are in the middle with something that is changing, and you are suffering those processes. I would say that our challenge now, our problem now, is how can we get the best economic policies plus the best social programs without enough political support, while international support is very high and national support is very low, leading with principles and playing by the rules. That's the problem that we are facing every day. And I would like to repeat the Atahualpa Yupanqui saying that I used 10 years ago finishing my intervention. He said, our feet are not as important as our steps. Our footprints are not as important as the path we make. And I think that we are doing and walking the right path. Thank you.
I said earlier that the Kennedy School aspired to teach public leadership, and I think this afternoon President Mahood has given us a lesson in public leadership. We'll now have a time for questions and answers, and there are microphones here on the floor and also in the balcony if you want to line up behind them. And I'd like people, as they ask questions, to identify themselves, and also please keep your questions, which means relatively brief, preferably ending with a question mark. No more speeches. That- Yes.
President Mawad, thank you for coming here. My name is Matthew Clausen, and I'm a student at the Kennedy School, and had the opportunity to live in Ecuador for 3 years. When you took office, I was there. My question to you is, you speak about the regional differences in the country. Could you tell me how you think you can get those politicians that are so influential, especially on the coast, on board with your long-term vision? I know that people follow those politicians and what they say, and if they are saying the same things that you are, your long-term vision will have a much greater chance.
As I understood, you were living in Ecuador and you left the country because I took office.
I came to come to your school.
I always wanted a clear majority in Congress with a very clear political agreement. We have the first majority, 30%. The second largest party is the Christian Social Party. They have around 25%. And 2 or 3 small countries, we worked together for the first 4 or 5 months. Some people told me they will go to the opposition, they will attack you very soon. And I said, yes, but the others are attacking me right now. And I need a coalition. The problem broke down because though that political party used in the political campaign the same George Bush's promise. Read my lips, no new taxes. And when they were elected, they went together, all the congressmen, to a notary and signed a document, a public document, saying we will never touch taxes. Never. For a good social network, you should receive from 13 to 15% of GDP in taxes. In my country, we're paying 9. But this is a dogma, no new taxes. The last law was approved with votes from the center to the left. I think it is very difficult in the world to find out a country where the leftists are approving taxes. But we got that. And the Social Christian Party is located mostly in the coast. We have a very clear regional division. And in Ecuador, if you want to be president, you have to get the core votes in one region and the other small party in the other one. I am from the Sierra, and the Christian Social Party is from the coast. So that's another problem. We have a very centralized government. Decentralization is a right aspiration, but they are using this politically. So we have to deal with all these problems. I think that public opinion will be in our side in the next laws. The most difficult was this one, because taxes are never popular. There are no country where you can be popular raising taxes. There is not. But privatization will have opposite. But the current in the country will go in that direction. So I hope to have a big alliance. I am not talking about a written agreement, but the possibility of getting to some points freely. And I hope it will work.
Let's turn to this mic.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your words. My name is Vidal Garza. I'm a former graduate student of the Kennedy School and now a researcher at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at Austin, University of Texas at Austin. And my question is very simple, it's pretty simple. I think you addressed the possibility of you will do whatever it takes to bring foreign investment to Ecuador. Particularly if you have, I don't know if you can explain a little bit more what specific plans does Ecuador is willing to take, and in which areas of manufacturing perhaps, or food producing as you were stressing out, or what areas of manufacturing or perhaps technology, I don't know, are you focusing on? Thank you.
Yes, we think that we have to stabilize the economy. We need to lower inflation, to stabilize the currency, and we are going to impulse privatization in these specific three sectors, no? Energy, oil, and communications. There are a lot of opportunities in the private sector, in agriculture especially, and in industries. But I think that the government, what has to do is to stabilize the economy and to privatize these big sectors.
Balcony.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. President. My name is Alvin Cabrera, and I am a student at the college. Several years ago, in 1996, I had the opportunity of living in your beautiful country, in the Andes, among the indigenos. And during that time, there was a period during which there was a witch trial in which they went into one of the cities, kidnapped a few people they accused of witches, and held a trial. The entire event was charged with political rhetoric. They were talking about how they felt that they were underrepresented in the country and that Ecuadorian law didn't match their sorts of needs. I was wondering how these tensions have been playing out during your time in office, and what approaches your government might have taken to address these problems.
Yes. We have a new constitution. In this new constitution, since the last year, there are a lot of progress for the indigenous people. They have much more representation. They have much more organizations, institutions. We have created, from the presidential office, a lot of institutions too. We have a permanent dialogue with them. And I would say that we have good relationships. That doesn't mean that we don't have problems. When there is a national strike, they come and usually gather the others, but with their specific requirements. Yesterday, for example, they didn't came out. And we are working with them. It is interesting to note that the unions are using the same ideas since 10 or 20 years ago. They are not changing. They are saying the same. It is not the case with the indigenous people. They are very creative. They have their own aspirations, their own problems, and they are getting what they are trying to get. And probably that will increase in the future.
Other balcony side.
Thank you. I'm Sophia Jarin, and I'm a member of Amnesty International. Mr. President, my question is what is your position regarding human rights in Ecuador? Particularly, what is your plan regarding the political assassination of Jaime Hurtado as a leader of the Communist Party in Ecuador, and how do you see that as part of your program with the government?
Jaime Hurtado was a friend of mine. He was a member of Congress. He was the leader of the extreme leftist party, and he was assassinated, and that was a shock in my country because we never have those type of problems, never. And we started the investigation. We formed the commission with members of the family of Jaime, with members of his political party, which of course is in the opposition, with members of the Congress, appointed by the Congress, I mean congressmen which are there. And the first findings goes to the conclusion that it was an assassination ordered and acted by the paramilitary groups coming from Colombia. They said that Jaime Hurtado was helping the guerrilla in Colombia, and it was a retaliation from Colombia to our country. we hope that we will never have another problem like that in the future. That's what we are waiting for. But I insist there's a commission that is working openly with the family members and the members of that political party.
Señor Presidente, my name is Andrew Sid. I'm a sophomore at the college where I study economics. My question is more specifically about, given the civil unrest in Ecuador at the moment, I'd like to know about specifically how your economic policies right now are being implemented, especially in terms of the banking sector and the problems you've had there. Thank you.
75% of the banking systems of the world have had problems in the last 25 years. This is a global problem. We do not have now the figures of the problem, and we want international independent auditors. We have done the terms of reference. We have called all the auditors in the world. On Monday, we will receive the last proposals. On Wednesday, the organization that has to make the decisions it is called to make the decisions, and they will have 2 months for working on the banks. With those figures, we will know how big is the hole that we have to face. But I can't comment more on that today.
Thank you. Mr. President, my name is Carlos Diaz. I'm a graduate of the Kennedy School from Venezuela, a country that is also going a very severe social, economic, and political crisis. Since you took office last year, you've tackled many complex problems with a lot of determination and vision. Based on your experience, what advice would you give President Chavez in his attempts to correct our country?
I think he is a leader. Maybe we can disagree in the things that he says, but he's a leader. I was in his inauguration. He was very powerful in the things that he said. Venezuela and Ecuador have many common problems. One of them is that in Venezuela, the debt will use 38% of the expenditures. In our country, 42%. Maybe we will meet again at the end of May in Cartagena. And what he's doing now is trying to get a law from Congress that give him a lot of powers. Sadly, in our Constitution, we don't have that procedure. It would be very useful that the Congress would say, okay, for 2 months you are the president, please govern this country. He is going to have that. And let's see what he's going to do. But the economic problems in Venezuela are very high, and I am not clear about what ways he will choose to go.
Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is David Lund. I'm a research fellow here at the Kennedy School. And my question to you is regarding El Nino. And to carry on your analogy of the ship, part of the problem with the economic problem with Ecuador right now is because that ship ran into the storm of El Nino. And it was a unique El Nino, not only in terms of its size and magnitude, but because it was predicted almost a year in advance, depending on how you define it. Given that prediction, can you explain to me the circumstances that prevented Ecuador from being better prepared, and what types of things are going to be done for the next El Nino?
It is very difficult. We have a volcano in Quito, the Pichincha, and the experts says that maybe we can have an eruption. That's the only thing that I am missing. I was making a list of all my sins in this life. And after doing that list, I concluded that all that things together are not equal to the problems that I am facing. So I believe in reincarnation now. The problem with El Niño was the worst in 500 years last year. It is impossible to deal with that. We have some programs that are working in the Rio Guayas, in the river, and the agriculture that are in those sectors. We have channels, but that costs a lot of money. Infrastructure is a lot of money. And it is impossible to deal with a tragedy that is so big. El Niño was expected. I was mayor of Quito at that time, and we made a lot of things. Cleaning channels, checking the sectors where the landslides could come, informing the population, which is so important. And we do not have the amount of rain that we expected, that's true. But in the coast, it was a complete disaster. I think that we can be better prepared. But what happens when the Mississippi River goes out of his... you can expect it. It happens very frequently. But when it happens, it is very difficult to deal with that. So I am not sure that the country will be prepared for the next El Niño. We have better roads, we have better bridges, but if it is a real natural disaster, how can you handle that?
Other balcony.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Janice Lee, and as a Kennedy School student who's read too many cases, thank you so much for bringing real-life leadership here to the Kennedy School. I'm very excited to be part of a group of Kennedy School students who's actually coming to Ecuador, Quito, and Guayaquil at the end of May to apply our policy skills to the prison system there. And afterwards, if we could bring you a letter, that'd be terrific. But my question is, I really admire your leadership style in sticking to principles over popularity, but I was wondering, if you don't go by polls or any public opinion, how do you measure how well you're doing your job?
Yes, the polls are one way to measure that. And probably we only have sinking costs now. We have to go down, and after that we have to go up. That's the experience in other countries in Latin America. President Menem called me and said, please stay on this path. Do not change. You have to face it. All of us have had the same problems in the past. You will harvest after. Please wait, but do not change. The same thing told me President Cardoso. The IDB, the World Bank. There's only one difference, I think. All the countries in Latin America, all the presidents have solved the problem with Congress in different ways. In Argentina or Brazil, the presidents were elected with a majority in Congress. In Chile, you have a coalition, and it is working. In Bolivia, there's a very different system. The second round is in the Congress, not in the ballots. So you have to find out a political coalition, not just to elect the president, but to govern. President Fujimori had his own way. He dissolved the countries. All of them solved the problem. I have this problem in Ecuador because I don't have the majority, we don't have a coalition. It is very difficult for our culture to get that coalition, and I am not planning to dissolve the Congress.
Just to follow up.
No, sorry, one per question.
Okay.
Mr. President, hi, my name is Luis Miguel Miranda. I am from Ecuador and currently going to college here at Harvard. My question to you is, have you considered adopting the US dollar as your currency? Yes, no, and why?
If the economy is working well, you can have very possibilities about the currency and the system. The economy in Argentina is working, and you have convertibility. The economy in Chile is working, and you have the, how do you call it? The banda cambiaria. The economy in Peru is working, and they have flotation. Panama has dollarization. But I think it is a mistake to think that choosing any of these systems will fix the problems with the economy. You have to fix the economy first, and then to choose one of these opportunities. I would say that it is impossible to go to a convertibility system or to a dollarization if you don't have at least two things: control the fiscal deficit and clean the banking system. If you do not answer those questions first, it is not possible to think about that. I am not meaning that with those two requisites you have to do it, but at least those two requisites are necessary.
Thank you.
Mr. President, excuse me, I'm Janine Salendi. I'm chairman and president of an international organization, Horizon Communications, based here at Harvard, down at Yale, and in Sweden, and working with the United Nations Development Program on focusing on solutions to problems in the world to bring to the world knowledge of environment, development, and population solutions. I very much appreciated the wonderful examples you presented to us of what you've done, and I would like to ask you if you would address, if you please, a little bit about how you are helping. You mentioned setting aside wonderful acreage in the rainforest, helping bring about ecotourism. Could you address for us briefly a little bit of the examples of how you're bringing together environment, health, and development in sustainable livelihoods as you are addressing poverty throughout your country?
The first thing is that we work together. We call the Minister of Energy, which is very interested in pumping more oil, of course, as I am, and the Minister of Environment, who is a woman, Yolanda Cacabatze. She was the first woman and the first person from the Southern Hemisphere to be elected president of the World Wide Fund. And we found that she could be at the same time president of the World Wide Fund and Minister of Environment. She knows a lot about this. So we are working together. We said, how much will we obtain from this oil well, and how much will we pay for this oil well in environmental terms? And we find out a balanced solution. We close this area. We will not have drillings in that area. There are a lot of communities which do not want contact with quote-unquote civilization. They are very happy with their way of living, and we have to respect them. Yes. And we will have ecotourism because another tribes and groups want that. And we need support from the international community. We think that we can rise from $30 to $100 million with these programs. And in this week, we have a meeting with the Minister of Tourism in New York, and she is working, she's a woman too, she is working with the first project, and I am eager to know what was the result of that. We have the Amazonia, we have a resource over there, we have to protect it, because as one Amazonian man said, many people here think that the Amazonian belongs to them. The oil belongs to them. The trees belongs to them. We think the other way around. We belong to the Amazonian. We are part of this environment. So we will never destroy that. We have to give them the chance to protect it.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Agustin Calisto from Quito. I'm studying business. I'm studying a master's degree in entrepreneurship at Babson College. I want to know, what do you believe are the industry that we should concentrate in Ecuador to generate growth and be competitive and generate competitive advantages for Ecuador in this global economy?
Okay, I have talked about some examples, but right now we have a program between the ESPOL, which is the Escuela Politécnica del Litoral, the CAF, the Corporación Andina de Fomento, the Harvard Business School, with Michael Porter. I heard about this program the first time here 2 years ago. Jeffrey Sachs was presenting this program with Merrill Grindle, Panayotou, and Michael Porter. It was related to Central America. 5 countries were combining their policies in the economy, their social programs, etc., trying to be competitive in the world in the next century. I was very impressed with that. I felt a lot of envy. I said, there are 5 countries that can work together. Why don't we work together in Ecuador? I get an agreement with Peru. Could I get an agreement with Ecuador? That's my perspective. So, of course. And that group is working. We have had a lot of meetings. The idea is to find out the niches where the Ecuadorian economy is competitive, and this will be the mother project for the same work for the Andean region. It is financed especially by the CAF, and the president of the CAF, Enrique Garcia, is with us today.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have neared the end of our time, but as I look in the audience, I see Peter Eigen, who's the head of Transparency International, Ronnie McLean, the mayor of La Paz, who did so much to defeat corruption in La Paz, and I can't help but ask a final question on their behalf. What is the key to your plan to defeat corruption?
Put the people first. I think that you need honest people. That's my personal experience in public administration. That's the first one. You need good people. The second, you need the legal framework. When you have, for example, a lot of discretionality, the public sector, or the person in the public sector can make any decision. In this side, in this side, in this way, he or she has a lot of power. You should avoid that, and you have to be very regulatory in that cases. You have to get a lot of controls, not only when the process is finished. In that case, you can pick the person that was corrupt, but you can't avoid the corruption. So you have to act in the prevention, in education. There are a lot of things, but I would say that there are no laws, there are no procedures if you don't have the right people. You need morality in them.
Well, let me say in conclusion that we are indeed proud of you. We now understand why you have been such a success, which is not your education at the Kennedy School, but your ability to stand for principles and present them clearly to people. You're an example of what public leadership should be, and we're very grateful to you for coming back and joining us. So thank you very much. I need this one piece of paper.
What a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great. You did a wonderful job.